second variable, our second set of variables are called geometric variables. These are things that change the shape or size of the body part, okay? Now, SID, SOD, and OID, source to image distance, source to object distance, and object to image distance, all change the shape and size of the displayed image. I'll say it simply, and so the best way that I've found out that besides actually playing with the X-ray machine, the best way that I've thought of to demonstrate these things and practice them for yourselves are to take a flashlight. You have flashlights on your phone, or you can just get a flashlight and play with it. Make shadow puppets, okay? If you have kids, go play with shadow puppets with them, okay? Everything that we could talk about here works with a flashlight, okay? Because flashlights have the same sort of geometry, right? The beam starts at the flashlight, right, at the bulb, and spreads out through space, the same way that the X-ray beam does. Where the X-ray beam penetrates the body, a flashlight just casts a shadow, right? But you can see the size of your shadow, the shape of your shadow, and the detail around the edge of the shadow, okay? Source to image distance, source to object distance, object to image distance. Your source to image distance, its geometric change is to affect magnification. Okay. Magnification, a small amount of edge detail is changed by changing your SID. Source to object distance, that primarily affects edge detail. We're going to give a word for edge detail a little later, okay? But right now, edge detail. Object to image distance affects magnification as well as edge detail. Focal spot size, this is one of the main effectors of the detailed edges of anatomy, okay? Again, I'll get to more on that.
What did you say from OID was the edge detail?
OID affects edge detail and magnification. Focal spot size, again, edge detail. Now, angulation and alignment primarily affect shape distortion. So think elongation, longer or shorter. Flexion, extension, tilt, rotation of a body part all change the shape of the body part. Motion of the body part, the image receptor or the X-ray machine, think of the X-ray machine wiggling on the stand, right? That affects detail at the edges of the body. Again, I give you a special technical term for that in a little while. Okay, I'm going to try to jam through the rest of these so I can move on to the other stuff because there's a lot to cover. Patient status. These are things specific to your patient. Okay, body habitus is how your patient is shaped. General condition of your patient. Do they have any disease processes? Typically, these variables affect the image signal, right? So think if they had a pneumonia and their lungs are full with fluid, right? That fluid is going to absorb more of the X-ray beam than somebody who has very clear lungs, okay? It's going to affect how much signal is in the remnant beam, okay? So you have to consider if a patient has a disease process, right? For example, in lumbar spine or abdominal imaging, if someone has a fluid-filled abdomen, that's a condition called ascites. Fluid-filled abdomen, their belly is going to absorb more of the useful beam, and less is going to be in the remnant beam. So you have to increase the signal. You have to increase the intensity, milliamperage or time. So age, gender, caste, contrast agents, the stage of respiration, right? Any changes to the patient, surgical hardware, metal installed, right? If somebody's got a metal hip, that titanium hip is going to absorb a bunch of the useful beam, and you might have to use more radiation to image somebody with a big titanium hip than you do with somebody with a normal hip. So most patient habitus stuff has to do with image signal, right? You have to increase or decrease the intensity of the beam, either KVP or mass changes, to account for somebody being thicker or thinner or denser or less dense, having metal in their body or not, having contrast dyes in their body or not. Patient status mostly is concerned with image signal. Image receptor systems. The main thing I'd like to get down here is that images done on the tabletop or images done in the grid, those two things we have to adjust the intensity or the image signal. Okay. Roughly speaking, and it changes with different types of table buckies, table grids, roughly speaking, you're going to need to use between 3 and 6 times the amount of radiation you would normally use when you stick the cassette underneath the tabletop. Okay. Those are usually reserved, bucky studies done with the cassette and the bucky grid, or the wall bucky, are usually reserved for body parts that are significantly thick enough. Does anybody remember how thick?
4 to 5.
Inches, so 10 to 12 centimeters. Yeah. So we like centimeters because they're easy to work with, and we just work with the metric system anyways. So 10 to 12 centimeters thick, which roughly speaking, that's the thickness of somebody's upper arm. Okay, so an average sized person's upper arm gets to be about 10 or 12 centimeters thick, and then you have to start considering using the table bucky or the wall bucky, which has a grid in it. I'm not going to talk about grids too much right now. But grids take more radiation because they absorb radiation. The type of cassette you're using, so the type of phosphor, I'm not going to describe all of these, we will do that in digital radiography. Are you using direct capture? Are you using fluoroscopy? Are you using charge coupled devices or TV cameras? All of that changes. They are all variables. Image processing. This is after you've shot the image. These are things that are going to change the appearance of the image. Okay. So how the image is converted into electronic, magnetic, or optical patterns, corrections made by the computer. Coming down here, post-processing changes. These are important. Changes made by the radiographer or radiologist. We call them, the primary one is windowing. Okay. Windowing is changing the blackening and contrast. So think how dark the image is. So darkness or brightness, making it darker or brighter. It's like Photoshop, right? Making it darker or brighter. Giving you more shades of gray, more contrast, or less shades of gray, and giving you a shorter, narrower grayscale. So that's windowing. Windowing is probably the primary one that you'll need to be concerned with. We refer to it as window width and window level. It's usually given as an icon with a W/L, window width and level. Think contrast and blackening. Lastly, these are just considerations for your viewing conditions, right? If you've ever been into an X-ray room, those of you who have, we don't keep it super bright, right? We can usually turn it up or down, but we usually keep it pretty dim in there, right? Especially in the area where we view the X-rays. So the ambient room lighting affects how well you can see the image, okay? Think about when you like do movie night at home, right? Maybe you do, but most people will turn all their lights off or turn like some lights off and get some like ambient room lighting, right? At home I've got like the LED lights you put behind the TV, right, to kind of make it look nice, but like still have it nice and dark in the room, yeah? Your ambient lighting matters for your viewing conditions, right? You do this when you play video games or watch movies, right? You go to the movie theater, right? They turn all the lights off in the movie theater, yeah? The lighting around you matters, okay? The back illumination of the image matters, how bright the computer screen is, right? You can change your brightness and on your phone screens, yeah? They usually do it automatically, but you can change the brightness on your phone screen depending on the ambient light around you. You ever noticed at night, if you have your phone set to like manual brightness adjustments, take it off of automatic, whatever you have it on during the day, if you try to use that same setting for brightness at nighttime, it's way too bright, right? Because in the daytime, you have all this ambient lighting around you, so your phone has to be bright, okay? At nighttime, no more ambient lighting, and that brightness all of a sudden is like way too much, and you've got to dim that screen down, right? Same concept here, right? We want our rooms to be relatively dim so that we can use adequate back illumination and see the visible structures we're trying to see. Viewing artifacts, monitor smudges, noise on the monitors. Viewing angles matter, right? Especially in older TV screen, older computer screens, right? You have to sort of be right in front of them. Monitor brightness and contrast, monitor resolution, surface reflectance. All of those things are variables that we can affect.